When my husband asked for a separation after 15 years of marriage, I didn't fight it. I simply nodded, signed the papers, and packed his favorite mug in a box. 2 nights later, he toasted champagne with his lover at the seaside bistro where we used to celebrate our anniversaries. I walked in, calm and dressed in white. I stopped at their table, smiled, and placed a sealed envelope beside his wine glass. "Freedom looks good on you," I said quietly. He smirked until he opened the envelope. Inside was a printed DNA report and a photo of the shirt he claimed he wore to a late-night emergency at the hospital. Lipstick, deep red, right on the collar. The report confirmed it didn't belong to me. That was how it ended. Not with a fight, not with shattered dishes, but with undeniable evidence and a silence that said everything. I still remember the moment I found it. I was sorting clothes when I saw his gym bag tucked beneath the coat rack. It was Tuesday morning, 9:17 a.m., Nguyen. The twins were at school. Anna was playing piano in the next room. The zipper was half open. I reached in and pulled out the shirt. It still smelled faintly of perfume. Not mine. It wasn't rage I felt, just cold clarity. No doctor would ever step into an OR wearing lipstick that shade, especially not on a hospital emergency night. Before I share what Sophia uncovered next, I'd love for you to join our circle of stories and strength. If you find meaning in stories where women rise after betrayal, don't forget to subscribe. It won't cost a thing, and you'll be fueling more real stories of women taking back their power. Let's see how this seemingly perfect life begins to unravel. I froze, my chest tight, as a decade and a half of marriage condensed into one silent, undeniable truth. Dr. Peter Brown, celebrated heart surgeon, poster boy of precision and prestige. My husband, the man I built a life with, wore someone else's betrayal like perfume. The illusion I clung to crumbled in an instant, like glass meeting stone. The irony was cruelly poetic. For years, the hospital staff referred to us as the Golden Browns. Peter, the miracle worker in scrubs, hands steady even under pressure. And me, the loyal constant, holding everything else together behind the scenes. Our pristine house in Oak Hill Gardens, with its wraparound porch and trimmed hedges, looked like it came from a catalog. The picture-perfect dream, sold in real estate brochures and wedding vows. None of this would be possible without Sophia, he'd proclaim at galas. Arms slung around my waist, champagne in hand, smile rehearsed. "She's my anchor," he'd add. The other surgeons' wives smiled politely, envy lurking just beneath mascaraed lashes. We had everything, or so I believed. 3 kids, a stable home, and a history forged through sleepless nights of training and triumph. But hindsight is cruel. The signs were there. I just refused to see them. Peter came home late more often, blaming hospital politics or short-staffed shifts. Team building, golf outings became regular fixtures on his calendar. Our talks became brief, logistical, just schedules, bills, and formalities. We spoke like colleagues managing a household, not partners sharing a life. When Peter became head of the cardio unit last March, I threw a formal dinner at our home, inviting the entire surgical team. He gave me a smile for show, then told me privately that I overstepped in front of the board. That night, he moved to the guest room, blaming a long day. "He's under pressure," I assured my sister over coffee the next morning. "It's a big role, tons of new responsibility." "Power changes men, Sophia," she said quietly. I waved it off, thinking her divorce had made her bitter. Then came the space, the quiet kind you feel in bed. Peter blamed the endless surgeries, the long shifts. When he shrugged off my touch at night, I tried everything, New lingerie, date nights, romantic getaways, all the tips from glossy magazines. He nodded through dinner, eyes on his phone the whole time. Are we still okay? I finally asked, voice barely above a whisper. After he barely touched the meal he used to love, just exhausted, Sophia. Complications with the Keller case. Then he'd disappear into his study, door locked, murmuring into the phone. Past midnight, I believed in respect. For space. For trust. It never even crossed my mind to check his phone. That was beneath me. Something anxious wives did, not someone like Sophia Brown. Until the 15-year mark started looming on the calendar, I had planned a surprise weekend getaway to Lake Tahoe, where we'd celebrated our 5th anniversary. I needed to check if he was free. His phone was on the nightstand while he showered. Just a quick glance, nothing more. That was the only reason a message popped up. Right as I picked it up, Dr. R. Harrington. Last night was unforgettable. I need you again. When will she be out of the picture? My hand shook as I tapped the conversation. Messages going back nearly a year. Photos that left no doubt. Secret getaways planned while I juggled parent-teacher meetings and flu season jokes about my perfect wife act, Peter. She still thinks you care about your anniversary, Rebecca. How sad. Still pretending like they're happy, I placed the phone exactly where I found it, brewed his morning espresso just like always, kissed his cheek as he grabbed his keys. Then, I threw up until I collapsed on the cold bathroom floor. That night, once the house was quiet, I asked him straight in our bedroom. The same room where we created a family, where we cried through miscarriages before IVF brought us hope, where he once held me the night my father died. Are you having an affair with Dr. Harrington? My voice didn't waver. Peter didn't deny it. He slowly took off his wedding ring, laid it gently beside his reading glasses. Yes. Does the timeline even matter now? He stared at me like I was a stranger. I want out of this marriage. The cold efficiency in his voice stunned me. This wasn't regret. It was a verdict. Why? Toying hen ngao. I don't fit in this life anymore. He waved his hand around like the room repulsed him. I've spent 15 years pretending this was enough. I'm 45. It's now or never. We created this together. Peter, who we are is because of this life. He let out a short, joyless laugh. I'm saving lives every day. What are you doing, Sophia? PTA meetings, laundry sorting, keeping track of piano recitals I succeeded in. Spite of this suffocating routine, every word landed like a slap. I paused my career so he could chase his. I ran our home so he could run the hospital. Played hostess to endless hospital events. You'll be provided for, he added, like he was finalizing a contract. Kids bounce back. They always do. That night, he moved his pillow to the guest room. I stared at the ceiling, replaying 15 years of my life, asking myself what was real. By sunrise, he was gone. At dawn, I found a folded envelope on the kitchen island. Inside was his lawyer's contact. The dream life I believed in had been smoke and mirrors. The fractures were always there. I'd just polished over them for too long. I didn't realize then the lipstick and texts were just symptoms of something much deeper. The roots of our marriage had rotted, long before I noticed the leaves dying. Peter's betrayal wasn't just personal, it was structural. And the truth of what he'd been hiding would upend everything I thought I knew, in ways that made the affair feel like a footnote. The morning after I found the lawyer's name, I booked a consultation with Isabella Winters, the sharpest divorce strategist in town I needed to map my next moves before entering a legal battlefield. Isabella's first words were cold and clear. Start a record? Now. That evening, I started with the money. After assuring the kids Daddy was working late, again I unlocked the wall safe behind Peter's study shelf. Inside was a trove of financial documents, tax files, property titles, brokerage reports. As I sifted through, small inconsistencies popped up, then patterns like mold creeping behind a flawless wallpaper. Monthly wire transfers, $4,800, $6,200, up to $9,900. From our shared account to an LLC named Birchstone Group. No invoice, no description, nothing to show what the funds were for. Over 2 years, nearly $250,000 had quietly vanished. The following morning, I called our financial advisor. The advisor hesitated, then admitted what I feared. Birchstone was legally tied only to Peter. Beyond that, the trail went dark. Do spouses really do this in divorces? I asked Isabella at our second meeting, laying out the printouts on her glass-topped desk. Sadly, yes. Very common, she replied. She leaned forward, flipping through the statements with a practiced eye. But these aren't just slip-ups. This is structured, intentional. That's when Isabella brought up the name Dr. Nathan Smith. He was involved in a previous case, she said casually. Worked with Peter. Left Ashridge Medical abruptly about 3 years ago. There were questions. I only had a faint recollection of Dr. Smith. Reserved, professional, never quite fit in at those polished hospital galas. He disappeared from the medical circuit like a ghost. No goodbye, no scandal, just silence. Peter brushed it off with, "We didn't see eye to eye." Just politics. After several dead ends, I finally located him. A quiet family clinic, nearly an hour's drive away. His receptionist hesitated, but the moment I said, "Doctor." Peter Brown, her tone changed. "Mrs. Brown." His voice was heavier than I remembered, weary and loaded with unspoken truths. "I hoped it'd be sooner," he said. We agreed on a quiet cafe off the highway. He looked older, not just in years, but in burden. He sipped black coffee, eyes sharp as ever, analyzing me like a case file. Peter's secrets were never going to stay buried forever, he murmured. I only wondered whether guilt or ego would crack first, he added. What he told me over that coffee unraveled everything I thought I still had. Ashford's fertility program had a dark history, he began, barely audible over the hum of the cafe. Multiple couples filed quiet complaints, IVF failures that made no medical sense. The lab logs didn't match what was done, he said. Microscopic errors, but patterns don't lie. I clutched my cup like a lifeline, though I hadn't sipped a drop. We'd fought through 3 rounds of IVF before the twins came into our lives. Anna came after 2 more tries, each round more draining than the last. Each failed round had crushed me, piece by piece, and each success miraculous. I began investigating quietly, he said. Dr. Mercer was fabricating outcomes, switching samples, inflating success numbers to protect the clinic's image and secure grants. When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. Said Peter had been in the loop all along. Not just aware, involved, actively. No, I whispered. He longed for children. We both did. Dr. Smith pulled a small USB drive from his coat and pushed it toward me. Medical logs, altered charts. Peter's signature is on every change request, which, in plain terms, meant tampering with genetic material, including yours. Why? I asked, my voice breaking. Why would he do something so cruel? At first, ambition. Mercer chaired the panel that made Peter chief of surgery. But when it came to your file, he paused, searching my face. Peter carries a genetic heart disorder, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's mild for him, but there's a 50-50 chance any child would inherit it. A surgeon with his reputation at stake couldn't afford to have children with a condition that might tarnish his image. The realization hit me like a freight train. I clutched the table's edge, trying not to fall apart. So when we did IVF, he made sure his sperm was never his. He arranged for anonymous donors, ones screened for health and genetics. Peter orchestrated every step with precision. I left with that USB scorching my bag and a referral to a discreet DNA testing agency. That night, once the kids were asleep, I gathered DNA, strands from their brushes, traces from their toothbrushes. I added one of Peter's old combs from the master bath, untouched for weeks. The 2-week wait nearly broke me. Peter pushed the divorce forward at lightning speed, insisting on psychological assessments and declaring I was too emotionally fragile to raise our children. His attorney fired off aggressive letters, questioning whether I could support the kids at all, framing me as someone who merely existed in Peter's shadow. The settlement offer was insulting, barely enough to keep a roof over our heads, clearly intended to pressure me into quiet compliance. Still, I kept up the facade, helped the twins assemble their volcano model, sat front row at Anna's piano recital, smiled during school drop-offs, nodded casually when other moms whispered about Peter. Crazy hospital hours, I'd explain. You know how surgeons are. At night, I combed through articles and court records on reproductive malpractice and ethical breaches in medicine. Some of the stories were horrifying. Physicians secretly fathering dozens of children, clinics accidentally implanting the wrong embryos, parents blindsided by DNA kits years later. Yet nothing I read mirrored our reality. A father intentionally sidestepping his own DNA, constructing a family built on deception while pretending to cherish a bond that never existed. The call came on a gray Tuesday morning. The woman's tone was calm, clinical, void of emotion. Your results are ready, Mrs. Brown. Would you prefer an email or to go over the results together now? Please email them, I murmured, needing the truth in black and white. The sterile phrasing of the report did little to dull the impact. DNA analysis excludes the tested man as the biological parent of all listed children. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. I printed out 3 copies. One for Isabella, one locked away in the private safe at the bank, and one placed neatly into a hospital-branded envelope I'd quietly taken from Peter's office shelf. In the weeks I continued the charade, I noticed my hands had stopped trembling. The grief had calcified into something sharp, unyielding. This wasn't just infidelity or financial deceit. This was betrayal at its root, one that predated our children's very existence. Peter had stolen my agency. He built a life atop a lie that defined 15 years of who I believed I was. My very identity as a mother, even the origin of our children, all while carefully crafting the image of a model husband, a flawless father, and a gifted surgeon who saved lives with steady hands. But the truth, raw and ruthless, unraveled it all. Now, I held the power to make sure his life would never be the same again. With the DNA results in my grasp, sorrow gave way to clarity, a blade honed by betrayal. For 15 years, Peter built a fortress of lies. I would take it down, brick by brick, truth by truth. My first move, contact the other families treated at Ashford while Peter was in charge. Dr. Smith one of the few unafraid to confront the past, gave me a list of 27 possibly affected couples. Most wouldn't talk. The fear of shattering what they held dearest, their children's identities, was too great. 5 families agreed to sit down with me, each carrying their own quiet burden. The Millers had twins, bright, curious, but genetically unfamiliar. The Patel's daughter suffered from medical conditions no one in either family had ever encountered. The Johnsons, Garcias, and Wilsons had all nearly given up, until Dr. Mercer took their cases, and against all odds, they conceived. We were just thankful, Sarah Wilson whispered, her voice breaking as tears ran down her cheeks. We never thought to question how it happened. We were too desperate to become parents. My investigation eventually pointed me to Diane Fletcher, a quiet former nurse who had spent over a decade behind the clinic's closed doors. We met in her cramped apartment beyond the city limits, every inch lined with metal cabinets stuffed with records. I kept everything, she said, voice shaking, as she produced a worn, leather-bound journal from the bottom drawer. Patient files, altered procedures, signatures that were never supposed to see the light of day. They thought it was all gone, she said, but I knew one day someone would come looking. Why didn't you go to someone? Report them, I asked. Diane's smile was bitter. I did, she said. I went to the hospital board, the ethics committee, even the police. Every single time, the reports vanished into silence, buried. Your husband, she added with a sharp look, has friends who make problems disappear. She flipped through a ledger, 8 years' worth of dates, patient codes, altered procedures, and quiet crimes. Peter's signature was there again and again, greenlighting deviations for cases flagged as complicated genetics. What about my file? I asked, barely above a whisper. Diane turned slowly to a tab labeled with my name. The dates matched perfectly. Directive from Dr. Brown. Replacement approved. Citing quality issues. No record of donor ID. I took photos of everything, page by page, signature by signature. This time, the evidence wouldn't vanish. As I reached the door, Diane placed a worn business card in my palm. Ask for Agent Dawson at the Medical Ethics Investigation Unit. Tell him I sent you. Michael Dawson, a veteran investigator on a federal task force specializing in medical fraud, had been watching Ashford for over a year. For 18 months he tried, and failed, to break through the clinic's silence. Too many walls, too many favors owed. Your documents might be the break we've been waiting for, he told me, eyes sharp behind his glasses. But we'll need more. Money trails, confession tapes, someone inside willing to talk. I promised to get him what he needed, all while wearing the mask of a heartbroken wife trying to move on. I played the part perfectly, nodding through custody talks, pretending his pitiful settlement offer wasn't a slap in the face. You're being unusually agreeable, Sophia, Peter said, eyebrows raised after one especially tense legal meeting. The children come first, I murmured. We've all been through enough. Every quiet nod, every staged agreement fed his ego and lowered his guard. He began parading Rebecca through our children's school events, as if daring me to react. He introduced her to our shared circle, smiling like nothing had been shattered. Sometimes she even stayed the night when our kids visited his new downtown apartment. Meanwhile, I kept recording, photographing, documenting, every lie, every lapse. Things shifted when I hired a private investigator to dig into Rebecca's background. What he uncovered stopped me cold. Rebecca wasn't just a lover or colleague. She was the daughter of Malene Harrington. 5 years ago, Malene Harrington was just another name on Peter's surgical roster, until her routine valve procedure became fatal. The hospital cleared Peter, claiming Malene failed to report a medication that interfered with anesthesia. But Dawson's files told a different story. Peter had operated on barely 2 hours of sleep after a weekend with Rebecca in Chicago. The mistake was buried, the charts rewritten, and the Harrington family quietly paid off with hospital hush money. A year later, Malene's husband collapsed from heart failure, triggered by chronic stress. Rebecca was left with nothing and no one. She changed her name, wiped her history clean, and inserted herself into Peter's orbit. Colleague, confidant, lover. Her revenge had brewed in silence for years. Calculated, patient, inevitable, just like mine, unfolding step by step. I considered confronting Rebecca, even wondered if we could join forces. But I knew better. Rebecca's emotions were her driving force, reckless, impulsive, but mine had to be cold, measured, deliberate. For the next month, I collected testimonies from former clinic employees. I traced the money, from Ashford to Riverside Holdings to shadowy offshore accounts. I secured sworn statements from patients whose treatments had been ruined, lives altered forever. While Dawson built his legal case, I worked on something far more personal: the total destruction of Peter's carefully crafted facade. I recorded Peter during one of our co-parenting sessions, steering the conversation, almost casually, toward fertility treatments. "The twins have your eyes," I said, as if I were commenting on a trivial detail. "Good genes," he muttered, eyes glued to his phone. "Do you ever wonder if they inherited your heart condition?" I asked, pushing further. His head shot up, eyes narrowing. "What heart condition?" he asked. "Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Dr. Smith mentioned it," I replied coolly. His face darkened, a storm brewing behind his eyes. "Smith should keep his mouth shut about things that don't concern him," he muttered angrily. "Don't our children's health concern him? Concern me?" I pressed, challenging him. "There's nothing to worry about," he waved it off. "I had them tested years ago. They're fine," he added, as if it were no big deal. "How could you test them without telling me?" I asked, voice low but sharp. "I'm their father and a doctor. I made a medical decision," he said, arrogantly justifying himself. The recording captured every word, every deflection, every slip. His acknowledgement of the heart condition, his admission that he had tested our children without my consent. His continued pretense of a biological connection, a lie that would soon be exposed. It was the final piece, the one I needed to bring everything down. Agent Dawson needed the timing. It was critical. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. The annual Ashford Medical Center Gala was just around the corner, the hospital's most prestigious event of the year. Peter had been chosen to receive the Physician of the Year award, recognized for his groundbreaking cardiac surgery work and his so-called unwavering ethical standards. The invitation arrived at our house, addressed to both of us, despite the ongoing divorce. Peter texted, saying he would be bringing Rebecca as his date, but that I was welcome to come if it wouldn't be too awkward. I replied with a mix of wounded dignity and gracious acceptance. "I wouldn't miss it. You deserve this recognition." What Peter didn't know was that I had already met with the chairman of the hospital board, sharing key pieces of evidence. A special session had been scheduled right before the gala, the moment Agent Dawson would present the full case against Peter, Dr. Mercer, and the fertility clinic. As I prepared my gala dress, a sleek black gown that Rebecca had once mocked as a suburban mom tries sophistication in a text to Peter, I received notification that Peter and Rebecca would be celebrating at Vincenzo after the award ceremony, our special restaurant, where he had proposed 15 years ago. It was the perfect finishing touch to my carefully orchestrated revelation. The envelope with the DNA results was ready. The authorities were prepared. Every detail had been meticulously planned. For the first time in months, I felt a calm certainty. Peter had spent 15 years constructing a lie, and now it was time for it to unravel. Tomorrow night, the truth would finally come to light. The night of the Ashford Gala arrived at the perfect dramatic moment. Thunderstorms loomed, threatening but holding off, the sky dark with impending tension. I entered the ballroom alone, wearing the black dress Peter had always criticized as trying too hard. My hair was swept up, elegant and polished. Diamond earrings, a gift from a husband who no longer existed, caught the light as I moved through the crowd of medical elites. I spotted Peter immediately, holding court near the stage, his arm possessively around Rebecca's waist. She wore crimson, the same shade as the lipstick that had triggered this cascade of revelations. Hospital board members gathered around them, laughing at his jokes, admiring his perfect companion. The picture of success. The secret board meeting had concluded just 30 minutes earlier, and the wheels of justice were in motion. I had watched from a side room as Agent Dawson laid out the evidence. Financial records, patient testimonies, and Diane Fletcher's meticulous documentation. Patient testimonies. Diane Fletcher's detailed documentation. The board members' faces shifted from skepticism to shock, then to grim resolution. The hospital's legal counsel had immediately contacted the district attorney's office, triggering the legal process. Peter, of course, knew nothing of this as he basked in the congratulations for his upcoming award. He had no idea that police officers were stationed at every exit, waiting for the signal from Agent Dawson. He didn't know that his perfectly constructed life was minutes from collapsing. I mingled quietly, accepting condolences for my crumbling marriage from colleagues' wives, who had always seen me as nothing more than an accessory to Peter's brilliance. "So brave of you to come tonight," Margaret Reynolds, the wife of the chief of surgery, whispered. Her sympathy was genuine, though her eyes kept following Peter and Rebecca. "I wouldn't miss seeing Peter receive the recognition he deserved," I said, smiling in a way that made her visibly uneasy. The award ceremony proceeded as planned, with all the pomp and circumstance. Dr. Helena Winters, the chair of the hospital board, had decided that a public revelation would be more impactful than a quiet arrest. Peter ascended the stage to thunderous applause, accepting the crystal trophy with practiced humility. "Medicine isn't just science," he intoned into the microphone, voice full of gravity. "It's a sacred trust between doctor and patient," he continued. "Ethics must guide every decision, every procedure, every moment in the operating room," he said, eyes scanning the audience. I watched Rebecca closely during his speech, her expression unreadable, the slight tension in her shoulders, the calculated adoration in her eyes. She was playing a role, just as I had for 15 years, but for very different reasons. Our gazes met briefly across the room, and something passed between us. A recognition of sorts. Two women who knew the real Peter Brown. After the ceremony, they left for Venzo, just as planned. I followed 20 minutes later, the cream-colored envelope secure in my clutch. The restaurant hadn't changed. White tablecloths, soft lighting, Italian opera playing softly in the background. The maitre d' recognized me immediately. "Mrs. Brown, what a surprise to see you. Your husband mentioned you might join us." I couldn't tell if Peter was arrogantly confident or preparing for some public embarrassment. Either way, it fit perfectly into my plan. They sat at our old favorite table by the window. Peter had ordered the 1982 Bordeaux we had shared on our anniversary 5 years ago. The bottle between them cost more than a month's worth of groceries for our children. Peter noticed me first. His expression changed from surprise to smugness, clearly thinking I had come to beg. Rebecca turned her flawless face, putting on a mask of polite concern. "Sophia?" Peter's voice carried the patronizing tone he had mastered. "Well, this is a surprise, isn't it?" I walked toward their table, calm and composed. "You told the maitre d' I might join you, just as a polite mention. I didn't think you'd actually show up." Rebecca shifted awkwardly. "Maybe I should leave you two alone for a moment." "Please stay," I said, meeting her gaze directly. "After all, you've earned your place at this table, Rebecca. Or should I call you Rebecca Harrington?" The color drained from her face. Peter furrowed his brow in confusion. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, his voice sharp. "Rebecca knows, doesn't she? Rebecca, daughter of Malene Harrington. The patient whose death you covered up, Peter. The woman whose heart valve you replaced while running on fumes after a weekend with her daughter in Chicago. Ironic, don't you think?" Peter turned to Rebecca, realization slowly dawning. "Is this true?" Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. I seized the momentary confusion to place the cream-colored envelope on the table. "Freedom looks good on you," I said quietly. He smirked until he opened the envelope. Inside was a printed DNA report and a photo of the shirt he claimed he wore to a late-night emergency at the hospital. I watched as his expression transformed, confusion, then disbelief, then horror as understanding dawned. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Is it? You ensured your sperm was never used during our IVF treatments. You falsified medical records. You lied to me for 15 years about our children's very existence." Rebecca stared at the document, her face pale. I turned to Peter. "What's she talking about?" "Nothing," Peter snapped, trying to recover his composure. "Sophia's making up stories because she can't accept our divorce." "Then you won't mind explaining this to the hospital board," I said, gesturing toward the restaurant entrance where Dr. Winters and several board members now stood, accompanied by Agent Dawson. "Or maybe the DA would be interested. Or perhaps our children should hear it from me first." Peter's expression twisted into disbelief and fury. "You spiteful—" "I'd watch my tone if I were you," Agent Dawson interjected, stepping forward. "Dr. Brown, you're under arrest for medical fraud, financial misconduct, and breaches of medical ethics." The dining room hushed as Dawson began the Miranda warning. Rebecca remained motionless, her personal vengeance eclipsed by a reckoning far greater than she'd envisioned. "This was your plan all along," Peter growled as cuffs clicked around his wrists. "All those months pretending to be the calm, compliant ex? You had 15 years to build your illusion. I only needed 3 months to dismantle it. I believe you. Your mother deserved her own truth." The story broke nationwide. Medical journals, headlines, everywhere. Peter was formally charged, and his medical license revoked until trial. The fertility clinic closed its doors while investigators dug deeper. Dozens of families stepped forward, desperate for clarity. The court brought in a forensic accountant to trace the hidden wealth. The kids' future was safeguarded through a newly established trust. Ashford began forming an ethics committee to oversee fertility practices. We'll lead it together. Your voice is essential. For 15 years, I was just Sophia Brown, always standing in his shadow. Now, for the first time, I was seen for who I truly was. Any second thoughts? She asked. They'll know the truth. But love isn't built on DNA. What I felt wasn't triumph. It was freedom. I had finally claimed my own story. Flawed, raw, but entirely mine. Half a year after the gala, I met Rebecca again at a new restaurant. Our unexpected bond had been forged during the courtroom battles. Two women deceived by the same man in different ways. Any regrets? She asked, the weight of everything between us unspoken. They'll come to know the truth one day, she added softly. I paused, turning the question over in my mind. They'll understand one day, and even if their beginning was a lie, my love for them has always been real. Their lives began with lies. I chose to replace them with truth, no matter how painful. That night, as I stood by the door of the children's room in the house we fought to keep, I felt something I hadn't expected. It wasn't triumph or revenge, it was release. The illusion of perfection was gone, replaced by something real. I had stopped living inside someone else's elaborate fiction. After 15 years, I was finally writing my own story, imperfect, complex, but completely mine.